The bullet had torn through more than just flesh and bone. It had ripped through Harrison Ellis's belief that he deserved anything good in this world. Standing at the edge of Concord, Nevada, in the scorching summer of 1878, Harrison watched the dust devils dance across the desert floor, his right hand trembling as it always did now. The doctors in Carson City had told him he was lucky to be alive after that ambush 3 months ago. Lucky. The word tasted like ash in his mouth. The Dalton gang had left him with more than just a mangled hand and scarred chest. They had taken his confidence, his steady aim, and his sense of worth. A cowboy who could not rope properly or shoot straight might as well be dead. The small town of Concord sprawled before him, a collection of weathered buildings huddled together against the harsh Nevada landscape. He had drifted here after leaving the ranch where he had worked for 7 years, unable to face the pitying looks from the other hands when he fumbled with tasks that once came as naturally as breathing. At 26 years old, Harrison felt ancient, used up, and discarded. The general store needed someone to help with inventory and heavy lifting, according to the notice he had seen posted at the saloon. It was not cowboy work, but Harrison figured he could manage it with his left hand doing most of the labor. He pushed open the door, and a small bell chimed overhead. The interior was dim and cool, a welcome relief from the brutal afternoon heat. Shelves lined every wall, stocked with everything from canned goods to farming equipment. Behind the counter stood a woman with dark auburn hair pulled back in a practical bun, her green eyes lifting to meet his as he entered. "Good afternoon," she said, her voice carrying a warmth that seemed at odds with the harsh desert town. "Can I help you find something?" Harrison removed his hat, suddenly conscious of how trail-worn he must look. "I saw you had a notice up about needing help. I am looking for work." She studied him for a moment, and Harrison braced himself for the inevitable questions about his hand, which he kept partially hidden behind his hat. Instead, she smiled. "You are an answer to prayer. My father passed 2 months ago, and I have been trying to run this place alone. The name is Diana Kent. Harrison Ellis." He stepped forward, extending his left hand instead of his right, hoping she would not notice the awkwardness. She shook it firmly, her grip surprisingly strong. "When can you start, Mr. Ellis?" The question caught him off guard. "You do not want to know anything about me. Where I have worked before," Diana tilted her head slightly. "Do you steal?" "No, madam." "Do you drink to excess?" "No, madam." "Are you willing to work hard and treat people fairly?" "Yes, madam." "Then I know everything I need to know." She moved from behind the counter, and Harrison could see she was wearing a simple calico dress, practical and well-worn. The work is not glamorous. Unloading shipments, stocking shelves, helping customers. The pay is fair, and you can have the small room in the back if you need a place to stay. Harrison felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest, something that felt dangerously close to hope. "I can start today if you need me." "Today would be perfect. We have a shipment arriving this afternoon." Deanna walked toward the back of the store, gesturing for him to follow. "Fair warning, Mr. Ellis. This town can be rough around the edges, but the good folks outnumber the bad." The back room was cramped but organized, with crates and barrels stacked neatly along the walls. A narrow staircase led to what Harrison assumed was Diana's living quarters above the store. She showed him where things belonged, her instructions clear and patient. When she handed him a crate to move, she noticed his hesitation. "Is your right hand injured?" she asked, her tone matter-of-fact rather than pitying. Harrison felt his jaw tighten. "I can still work. I will not let it slow me down." "I did not say it would." Deanna met his eyes directly. "I just want to know if there are certain tasks I should not ask of you." The honesty in her question disarmed him. Anything requiring fine motor control with that hand, and I cannot shoot worth a damn anymore. Well, seeing as this is a general store and not a shooting gallery, I think we will manage just fine." She smiled again, and Harrison found himself wanting to believe her. The afternoon passed quickly. A freight wagon arrived with supplies from Carson City, and Harrison threw himself into the work of unloading it. His body remembered the rhythm of manual labor, even if his damaged hand made every task more difficult than it should have been. Deanna worked alongside him, lifting smaller crates and directing where everything should go. She never commented on the way he had to adjust his grip or use his left hand for tasks that would normally require two. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, painting the Nevada sky in shades of orange and purple, Diana locked the front door and turned to Harrison. "You did good work today. Better than I expected, honestly." "You expected me to fail." The words came out sharper than he intended. "I expected you to be like most men who drift through Concord looking for easy money or running from something." Diana leaned against the counter, her green eyes studying him with an intensity that made Harrison want to look away. "But you are running from yourself, are not you?" The observation hit too close to home. "I should go find somewhere to bed down for the night. The room upstairs has a spare bed. It is not much, but it is clean and free of vermin." Deanna pushed away from the counter and headed toward the stairs. "Come on, I will show you." Harrison followed her up the narrow staircase into a modest living space. The main room served as both kitchen and sitting area, with a fireplace against one wall and a small table near the window. 2 doors led off the main room. Deanna opened one to reveal a small bedroom with a single bed, a washstand, and a trunk for belongings. "It was my father's room," she said quietly. "He would have liked knowing someone was putting it to good use. I am sorry for your loss." The words felt inadequate, but Harrison meant them. "Thank you." Deanna stood in the doorway, her expression pensive. He had a good life, 72 years, and he spent most of them doing what he loved. Not many people can say that. Harrison set his worn saddlebags on the bed. "How long have you been running the store?" "Since I was 16. My mother died when I was young and father needed the help. I am 24 now and I cannot imagine doing anything else." She moved back toward the main room. "There is stew on the stove if you are hungry. Help yourself." The kindness felt foreign, almost suspicious. Harrison was used to people either pitying him or dismissing him. Deanna did neither. She simply accepted his presence as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Over dinner, they talked little. Deanna asked basic questions about where he had come from. He told her about working ranches in California and Arizona. She shared stories about Concord, about the silver miners who sometimes came through, about the families who depended on her store for supplies. She did not press him about his injury, and Harrison found himself grateful for her restraint. That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed, Harrison stared at the ceiling and listened to the sounds of the town settling into sleep. For the first time in months, he felt something other than despair. It was fragile and uncertain, but it was there a small flicker of possibility that maybe, just maybe, he could build something from the wreckage of his old life. The days that followed fell into a comfortable rhythm. Harrison arrived downstairs each morning to find Deanna already at work, checking inventory or preparing the store for customers. They worked side by side, their movements gradually synchronizing as they learned each other's patterns. Deanna taught him the ins and outs of running a general store, how to deal with difficult customers, how to keep the books, how to negotiate with suppliers. Harrison discovered he had a knack for the work. His years as a cowboy had made him strong and resilient, and he learned to compensate for his injured hand with creativity and determination. When he could not grip something properly with his right hand, he found other ways to manage. Deanna never made him feel inadequate, never suggested that his disability made him less capable. 2 weeks after he started, a group of miners came into the store looking for supplies. They were loud and rough, their manners coarse from too much time away from civilization. One of them, a burly man with a scarred face, leaned across the counter toward Deanna with a leer that made Harrison's blood boil. "How about you throw in a kiss with my purchase, sweetheart?" the miner said, his breath reeking of whiskey. Diana's expression remained calm. "How about you pay for your goods and move along?" The miner's face darkened. "I do not like your tone." Harrison stepped forward, positioning himself between Diana and the counter. "The lady asked you to pay and leave. I suggest you do that." The miner looked Harrison up and down, clearly assessing whether he posed a threat. His eyes landed on Harrison's scarred right hand, and a nasty grin spread across his face. "What are you going to do about it, cripple? You going to shoot me with that busted hand?" The old shame rose hot in Harrison's chest, but before he could respond, Deanna spoke up. "Jake Morrison, you have been drinking at the saloon since noon, and you smell like you bathed in a barrel of rot gut. You will apologize to both of us, pay for your supplies, and leave my store. Or you can explain to Sheriff Daniels why you are harassing the 2 people who keep this town supplied." The use of the miner's full name seemed to sober him slightly. He glanced at his companions, who were suddenly very interested in examining the goods on the shelves. After a tense moment, Morrison tossed some coins on the counter. "Did not mean any offense." "Yes, you did," Deanna said calmly, "but I am willing to overlook it this once. Do not make me regret it." The miners gathered their purchases and left, the bell above the door chiming cheerfully in contrast to the tension that lingered in the air. Harrison realized his fists were clenched, his damaged hand throbbing from the strain. Diana touched his arm lightly. "Thank you for standing up for me." "He had no right to speak to you that way." "No, he did not, but I have dealt with worse." She squeezed his arm gently before moving away to straighten the items the miners had disturbed. "You learn to handle yourself when you run a business alone in a town like this." Harrison watched her work, impressed by her composure. She was tougher than she looked, this quiet woman with the steady green eyes and patient manner. Over the following weeks, he came to appreciate more of her quiet strength. She treated everyone fairly, from the wealthiest ranch owner to the poorest prospector. She extended credit to families she knew were struggling, kept meticulous records, and never once complained about the long hours or the physical demands of the work. She also, Harrison noticed, never seemed to rush him or make him feel inadequate. When he struggled with a task, she would either help wordlessly or suggest an alternative approach. She had a way of making him feel capable rather than broken, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, Harrison began to believe it might be true. One evening in late August, after they had closed the store and were sitting down to dinner, Deanna asked him about his past. "You do not have to tell me if you do not want to, but I would like to know what happened to your hand, and what brought you to Concord." Harrison had known this conversation was coming. He set down his fork and stared at the table, gathering his thoughts. "I was working a ranch in California. Good place, good people. We were driving cattle to market when the Dalton gang hit us. They killed 2 of the hands and took most of the herd. I tried to stop them." He paused, the memories flooding back with painful clarity. The chaos, the gunfire, the searing pain as a bullet shattered the bones in his hand. "I got shot. Twice, actually. Once in the hand, once in the chest. The chest wound healed clean, but the hand never came back right. The doctors did what they could, but the damage was too severe." Deanna listened without interrupting, her eyes never leaving his face. After I recovered, I tried to go back to work, but I could not rope, could not shoot, could barely hold tools properly. The foreman was kind about it, but we all knew I was useless, so I left. Been drifting ever since, trying to figure out what a broken-down cowboy is supposed to do with his life. You are not broken down, Deanna said firmly. You are adapting. That is a generous way to put it. It is the truth. She leaned forward, her expression intense. Harrison, in the 2 months you have been here, you have learned every aspect of this business. You have handled difficult customers, managed heavy shipments, and kept accurate books. You have done all of this while working around an injury that would have defeated a lesser man. That is not broken. That is resilient. Her words stirred something in Harrison, something that had been dormant since the day he took those bullets. You do not know what it is like. Everything I was, everything I knew how to do, it is all gone. No, it is not. You are still the same man. You just have to be that man in a different way. Deanna reached across the table and took his damaged hand in both of hers. The gesture was so unexpected, so gentle, that Harrison flinched. This does not define you, Harrison, unless you let it. He looked down at their joined hands, at the way her fingers curled carefully around his twisted ones. No one had touched his injured hand with anything other than clinical detachment since the shooting. Deanna held it as if it were precious, as if it were whole. Why do you care? The question came out rough, almost accusatory. Deanna met his eyes steadily. Because I see you, Harrison Ellis. Not the injury, not the pain, not the fear. I see the man who works hard, who treats people with respect, who stood between me and danger without a second thought. I see someone worth knowing. Something cracked open inside Harrison's chest, something that had been locked tight since the day he lost everything. He turned his hand in her grasp and squeezed her fingers with what strength he had. I do not know how to be anything other than what I was. Then maybe it is time to discover who you can be. The conversation marked a turning point. In the weeks that followed, Harrison found himself opening up to Deanna in ways he never had with anyone. They talked during meals, during quiet moments in the store, during evening walks through the dusty streets of Concord. He told her about his childhood in Missouri, about losing his parents to cholera when he was 15, about the ranches where he had worked and the men who had taught him the cowboy trade. Deanna, in turn, shared her own story. Her mother had died when she was 8, leaving her father to raise her alone. Instead of sending her away to relatives or remarrying, he had taught her the business and treated her as a partner. She had never regretted staying in Concord, never longed for the supposedly refined life that some women sought in the big cities. This is home, she told Harrison one evening as they watched the sunset from the porch outside the store. These people depend on me, and I depend on them. That means something. Harrison understood. In the months since arriving in Concord, he had come to appreciate the simple rhythms of the town. The miners and ranchers who came through, the families who shopped weekly for supplies, the occasional travelers stopping to rest before continuing their journeys. It was a different life from what he had known, but it was beginning to feel like it could be his life. He was also acutely aware of his growing feelings for Deanna. She occupied his thoughts during the day and his dreams at night. The way she laughed at his dry observations, the way she concentrated when doing the books, the way she treated everyone with dignity, it all drew him to her like a moth to flame. But Harrison held back. What did he have to offer her? He was a former cowboy with a crippled hand, no prospects beyond the job she had given him, and a past marked by violence and loss. Deanna deserved better than a broken man who was still learning how to live with his limitations. September brought cooler temperatures and the first hints that summer was ending. The store stayed busy as people prepared for the coming winter. Harrison threw himself into the work, grateful for the distraction it provided from his confused feelings. One afternoon, a well-dressed man walked into the store, his expensive boots clicking on the wooden floor. He was in his early 30s, with slicked back hair and a confident bearing that immediately set Harrison on edge. "Deanna, my dear," the man said, approaching the counter where Deanna was helping another customer. "I was hoping to speak with you." Deanna finished with her customer before turning to the newcomer. Her expression was polite but cool. "Mr. Thornton, what can I do for you?" "I have a proposition for you." Thornton glanced at Harrison dismissively before focusing back on Deanna. "I am opening a new mercantile in Virginia City, and I need someone with your expertise to run it. The pay would be triple what you make here, and you would have a much larger operation to oversee." "This store is my home, Mr. Thornton. I am not interested in leaving Concord." Thornton's smile did not waver. "Perhaps you need time to think about it. Virginia City is growing rapidly. The opportunities there are far beyond what this dusty little town can offer." "I do not need time to think about it. My answer is no." "That is disappointing." Thornton's eyes flicked to Harrison again, and this time his gaze was calculating. "I also noticed you have hired help." "How is that working out?" "Very well, thank you. I only mention it because a woman in your position needs to be careful. You are vulnerable here, running this business alone. Well, mostly alone." He stressed the last words with a meaningful look at Harrison's scarred hand. "A strong business partner could provide security as well as prosperity." Diana's expression hardened. "I have all the security I need, Mr. Thornton. Now, if you are not here to make a purchase, I have work to do." Thornton held up his hands in a placating gesture. "Just trying to help, Deanna. The offer stands if you change your mind." He tipped his hat and left, the bell above the door chiming his departure. Harrison waited until the man was out of sight before speaking. "Who was that?" "Gerald Thornton. He owns several businesses in Virginia City. He has been trying to buy this store for the past year." Deanna's jaw was tight with frustration. "He thinks every problem can be solved with money. Is he the reason you were so quick to hire me?" Diana turned to look at him, surprise flickering across her face. "What? No. I hired you because I needed help and you were qualified. A qualified cripple who could barely hold a crate properly on his first day." The bitterness in Harrison's voice surprised even himself. "A qualified worker who has proven himself invaluable over the past 3 months." Deanna crossed her arms. "Harrison Ellis, if you think I keep you around out of pity, then you have not been paying attention." The conviction in her voice cut through his self-doubt, but the encounter with Thornton had stirred up all of Harrison's insecurities. That night, he lay in bed and wondered if Deanna would be better off with someone like Thornton, someone successful and whole, someone who could provide the kind of security and stability she deserved. The thought of her with another man made his chest ache in ways that had nothing to do with old bullet wounds. Over the next few weeks, Thornton became a regular presence in the store. He always had some excuse to stop by. He needed supplies for his trip. He had a business question for Deanna. He wanted to discuss the latest news from Virginia City. Each visit was polite on the surface, but Harrison sensed the calculation beneath the friendly words. Deanna remained professional but distant with Thornton, never encouraging his attention, but never being outright rude either. Harrison watched these interactions with growing unease. He could see what Thornton was doing, positioning himself as a viable suitor, demonstrating his success and stability, making subtle digs at Harrison's perceived inadequacy. One evening, after Thornton had left following yet another transparent attempt to woo Deanna, Harrison could not hold back any longer. "Why do you not just tell him you are not interested?" Deanna looked up from the ledger she was working on. "I have told him, multiple times." "Maybe you need to be clearer. Maybe you need to trust that I can handle my own affairs." Her tone was sharp, unusual for her. Harrison felt his temper flare. "I am just trying to protect you." "From what?" "A persistent businessman." Deanna set down her pen and stood. "Harrison, I appreciate your concern, but I do not need protecting, especially not from someone whose only crime is being annoying. It is more than that, and you know it." "Then say what you really mean." Deanna's green eyes flashed with challenge. "What is this really about?" The words stuck in Harrison's throat. How could he explain that watching Thornton court her made him feel like he was watching his last chance at happiness slip away? How could he admit that he had fallen in love with her, but felt he had no right to say so? "Nothing," he muttered, turning away. "Forget I said anything." He heard Deanna's frustrated sigh behind him. "Harrison, I am going to check the back room inventory." He left before she could say anything else, needing space to wrestle with the emotions churning inside him. The tension between them lingered for days. They worked together with professional courtesy, but the easy warmth that had developed over the past months was gone. Harrison hated it, hated himself for causing it, but he did not know how to fix it without revealing feelings he was certain were better left unspoken. On a crisp October afternoon, everything came to a head. Harrison was helping Deanna rearrange some shelves when she suddenly spoke. "I am going to ask you a question, and I want an honest answer." He set down the crate he was holding. "All right. You have feelings for me." The directness of the question left Harrison momentarily speechless. Deanna stood with her arms crossed, her expression determined. She was not going to let him dodge this. "Yes," he finally said, the word coming out rough. "But it does not matter." "Why does it not matter?" "Because look at me, Deanna." Harrison held up his damaged hand. "I am a washed-up cowboy who can barely grip a rope. I have no money, no prospects beyond the job you gave me out of kindness. You deserve someone like Thornton, someone successful and whole." Diana's eyes blazed. "Do you honestly think I care about any of that?" "You should." "Well, I do not." She crossed the distance between them in 3 quick steps. "Harrison, I do not want Gerald Thornton. I do not want his money or his fancy business deals. I want a man who works hard, who treats people with respect, who makes me laugh even when we are exhausted from a long day. I want someone who sees me as a partner, not a prize to be won." Harrison's heart was hammering in his chest. "Deanna, I want you, you stubborn fool. I have wanted you since you walked into my store 4 months ago looking like you expected the world to reject you. I have been waiting for you to realize that you are not broken, that you are not less than what you were. You are exactly who I need." The words crashed over Harrison like a wave, washing away months of doubt and self-recrimination. He reached out with his left hand and cupped Deanna's face, his thumb brushing across her cheek. "I am terrified," he admitted. "I do not know how to do this. I do not know how to be what you need." "You already are what I need." Deanna covered his hand with hers. "You just have to believe it." Harrison closed the distance between them and kissed her. It was tentative at first, almost questioning, but Diana responded with a certainty that made his head spin. She tasted like peppermint tea and possibility. When they finally broke apart, Harrison rested his forehead against hers, hardly daring to believe this was real. "I am going to mess this up," he whispered, "probably. And I will mess it up too. That is how this works." Deanna smiled, her eyes bright with tears and joy. "But we will figure it out together." "Together," Harrison repeated, and for the first time in a very long time the future did not seem like something to fear. The shift in their relationship was both profound and natural. They continued to work side by side in the store, but now there were stolen kisses between customers, hands that lingered when passing items and glances that spoke volumes. The town of Concord noticed, of course. Small towns noticed everything, but the response was largely positive. Deanna was well liked, and people had warmed to Harrison over the months he had been there. Gerald Thornton, however, was less pleased. He continued his visits to the store, but his friendly mask began to slip. One afternoon in late October, he cornered Deanna when Harrison was out making a delivery. "You are making a mistake," Thornton told her bluntly. "That man has nothing to offer you. No future, no prospects. He is damaged goods, Deanna. You are settling." Diana's expression went cold. "Mr. Thornton, you are no longer welcome in my store. Please leave and do not come back." Thornton's face flushed with anger. "You are throwing away a real opportunity for what? A broken-down drifter. I am choosing my future, and it does not include you. Now leave, or I will have Sheriff Daniels escort you out." Thornton left, but not without a parting shot. "You will regret this, Deanna. This town is too small for you. You were meant for better things." When Harrison returned and Deanna told him what had happened, he felt a mix of satisfaction and worry. "Do you think he will cause trouble?" "I think his pride is wounded, but he is not dangerous." Deanna squeezed Harrison's hand. "And even if he does cause trouble, we will handle it together." The incident with Thornton seemed to be the final hurdle. In the weeks that followed, Harrison and Deanna settled into a rhythm that felt both comfortable and thrilling. They talked about the future, about their dreams and fears. Deanna wanted to expand the store eventually, maybe open a second location in a neighboring town. Harrison, to his surprise, found himself interested in the idea. He had skills that transferred well to business, and working alongside Deanna gave him a sense of purpose he had not felt since before the shooting. As November arrived and the Nevada desert began to cool, Harrison knew it was time to take the next step. He had been saving every penny from his wages, building toward a goal that once seemed impossible. One evening, after they had closed the store and were sitting by the fire in the upstairs living area, he pulled a small box from his pocket. Diana's eyes widened when she saw it. "Harrison, I know I am not the man you probably imagined ending up with," he began, his heart racing. "I know I have limitations and scars, both visible and not, but I love you, Deanna Kent. You saw something in me when I could not see it in myself. You were patient when I was stubborn, kind when I was bitter. You made me believe I could be more than my worst moment." He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small emerald. "It is not much, but the stone reminded me of your eyes. Will you marry me?" Deanna was crying, tears streaming down her face as she nodded. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes." Harrison slipped the ring onto her finger with trembling hands, and she pulled him into a kiss that sealed the promise between them. When they finally broke apart, Deanna was laughing and crying at the same time. "I love you so much," she said. "You have no idea how long I have been hoping you would ask. I should have asked sooner. I was just so afraid that I was not enough. You are more than enough. You always have been." Deanna held up her hand, admiring the ring in the firelight. "When do you want to get married?" "Tomorrow, if you would have me that soon." Deanna laughed. "Let us give it at least a few weeks. I want to do this properly." They set the date for the first Saturday in December. It gave them time to make arrangements and invite the people who mattered most. The news spread quickly through Concord, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. People who had come to appreciate Harrison's steady work and Diana's kindness were genuinely happy for them. The only sour note came from Gerald Thornton, who sent a brief, cold message congratulating Deanna on her upcoming nuptials and informing her that he was withdrawing his standing offer to purchase the store. Deanna read the message, laughed, and tossed it into the fire. "Good riddance," she said. "I never wanted to sell anyway." The weeks leading up to the wedding were busy and joyful. Diana worked with the local seamstress to create a simple but beautiful dress. Harrison ordered a new suit from a tailor in Virginia City, determined to look his best. They planned a small ceremony at the church with a reception afterward at the town hall. Harrison found himself amazed by how accepted he felt in Concord. Men who had initially been skeptical of the damaged cowboy working in the general store now clapped him on the back and offered their congratulations. Women brought gifts for the couple: quilts, dishes, preserves for their pantry. It was a level of community support Harrison had never experienced, and it moved him deeply. The night before the wedding, as tradition dictated, Harrison stayed at the boarding house while Diana remained above the store. He lay in the unfamiliar bed, thinking about how much his life had changed in the past 6 months. He had come to Concord broken and hopeless, convinced that his worth had been destroyed along with his gun hand. Diana had shown him differently. She had been patient when he was difficult, steadfast when he doubted, and loving when he felt unlovable. She had not fixed him; he was still learning to live with his limitations, but she had helped him see that those limitations did not define him. The wedding day dawned clear and crisp, the kind of perfect December morning that seemed designed for new beginnings. Harrison dressed carefully in his new suit, his hands shaking slightly as he fumbled with the buttons. The church bells rang as he made his way through town, and it seemed like half of Concord had turned out for the ceremony. Inside the small church, Harrison waited at the altar with Reverend Thompson. His heart hammered in his chest as the doors opened and Diana appeared. She looked radiant in her cream-colored dress, her auburn hair styled in soft waves, her green eyes shining with joy. As she walked down the aisle toward him, Harrison felt tears prick his own eyes. This remarkable woman had chosen him. Despite everything, she had seen worth in him and decided he was the man she wanted to spend her life with. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They exchanged vows in steady voices, promising to love and support each other through whatever challenges life brought. When Reverend Thompson pronounced them husband and wife, Harrison kissed Diana with a joy so intense it was almost painful. The reception that followed was lively and warm. People danced and ate and celebrated with genuine happiness. Harrison danced with his new wife, grateful that dancing only required him to hold her, something his damaged hand could manage with Diana's patient guidance. As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, Diana leaned against Harrison's shoulder. "Happy?" she asked. "Happier than I have any right to be," he replied honestly. "You have every right to be happy, Harrison Ellis. Do not ever doubt that again." They walked back to the store together through the quiet streets of Concord, hand in hand, ready to begin their life as husband and wife. The room that had once been Diana's alone was now theirs to share, and as they crossed the threshold, Harrison felt the last of his old doubts fall away. This was where he belonged. Not because he had regained what he lost, but because he had found something new, a love that saw him as he was and cherished him for it. The months that followed their wedding were some of the happiest of Harrison's life. He and Diana fell into an easy partnership, running the store together and building their life side by side. They learned each other's quirks and habits, navigated disagreements with patience and humor, and discovered that marriage was both easier and harder than either had expected. Harrison continued to adapt to his limitations. Some days were better than others. On bad days, when his hand ached or refused to cooperate, Diana would quietly take over the tasks that frustrated him. On good days, when he managed something he had not thought possible, she celebrated with him as if he had won a great victory. In February, Deanna realized she was pregnant. The news filled them both with excitement and trepidation. Harrison worried about being a good father, about whether his injury would limit his ability to care for a child. Deanna, as always, refused to let him spiral into doubt. "You will be a wonderful father," she told him firmly. "Our child will be lucky to have you." As Diana's pregnancy progressed, Harrison found himself working even harder to ensure everything was perfect. He expanded the inventory, negotiated better prices with suppliers, and even managed to increase their profits. He wanted to prove that he could provide for his growing family, that Diana's faith in him had not been misplaced. The store thrived under their joint management. Harrison's practical cowboy sensibility combined well with Diana's business acumen. They made a formidable team, and Concord prospered as a result. The town was growing, drawing more settlers and businesses, and the general store remained at its heart. In late September of 1879, Diana went into labor. Harrison paced the floor downstairs while the midwife and doctor worked upstairs. Every cry from above made him flinch, made him want to run up and be with her. But the midwife had been firm he would only be in the way. After what felt like an eternity, he heard a new sound, the sharp, indignant wail of a newborn. Harrison took the stairs 2 at a time, bursting into the bedroom just as the midwife was handing Deanna a tiny bundle. "You have a son," Deanna said, her face flushed and exhausted but radiantly happy. "A healthy baby boy." Harrison approached slowly, almost reverently. The baby was red-faced and squalling, his tiny fists waving in the air. When Deanna placed him in Harrison's arms, he felt a surge of emotion so powerful it nearly brought him to his knees. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "I am your father." The baby's eyes, unfocused and searching, seemed to look right at him. Harrison touched the tiny hand with one finger, and impossibly small fingers wrapped around his. Even his damaged hand could feel the strength of that grip, the determination of this new life. They named him Henry, after Harrison's father. Henry Ellis came into the world with a lusty cry and a stubborn streak that would serve him well. Harrison discovered that his injury mattered very little when it came to caring for his son. He could hold him, rock him, comfort him. He learned to change diapers and prepare bottles with one-handed efficiency that would have seemed impossible months earlier. Diana watched him with their son, her eyes soft with love. "I told you that you would be a wonderful father." "I am terrified I will drop him," Harrison admitted. "You will not drop him, and even if you do, babies are tougher than they look." At Harrison's horrified expression, she laughed. "I am joking. Mostly." Fatherhood changed Harrison in ways he had not anticipated. The protective instincts he had felt toward Diana intensified tenfold with Henry. He would have walked through fire for his family. More importantly, he found a new sense of purpose. He was not just a former cowboy trying to find his place. He was a father, a husband, a business owner. He was building something that would last beyond himself. As Henry grew from infant to toddler, Harrison marveled at every milestone. First smile, first laugh, first steps, each moment felt like a miracle. Deanna often caught him staring at their son with an expression of wonder, and she would smile and shake her head. "You look surprised every time you see him," she observed one evening as they watched Henry play with wooden blocks on the floor. "I suppose I am. I never thought I would have this. A family, a home, a purpose. There were times when I thought I would spend the rest of my life drifting from place to place, never belonging anywhere." Deanna moved closer and took his hand. "But instead you found Concord. You found me. You found me," Harrison corrected. "I was just lucky enough that you decided I was worth keeping." "You were always worth keeping, Harrison. I just helped you see it." The store continued to prosper. By the time Henry was 2, they had expanded the building, adding more room for inventory and creating a proper office space. Harrison proved to have a talent for business negotiations, his straightforward cowboy honesty serving him well in dealings with suppliers and customers alike. One spring afternoon in 1882, a familiar face walked through the door. It took Harrison a moment to place him. It had been nearly 4 years since he had seen anyone from his old life. But he recognized the grizzled features of Tom Brennan, the foreman from the California ranch where he had worked when the Dalton gang attacked. "Harrison Ellis," Brennan said, his weathered face breaking into a grin. "I will be damned. Heard you were living out this way." Harrison shook the older man's hand warmly. "Tom Brennan, what brings you to Concord?" "Buying supplies for the ranch I am working now, just over the state line in California. New outfit, good people. We were told this was the best store in the area." Brennan looked around approvingly. "Did not realize it was your place." "My wife's place, really. I just help run it." Harrison felt a swell of pride as he said the words. "Deanna, come meet someone." Deanna emerged from the back room carrying Henry on her hip. Brennan's eyebrows rose in surprise, but his smile widened. "Well, well, you have been busy, Ellis." "Tom Brennan, this is my wife Deanna and my son Henry." "Deanna, Tom was my foreman back in California." They talked for a while, catching up on old times. Brennan asked about Harrison's hand, and Harrison answered honestly about its limitations and how he had learned to adapt. The older man nodded thoughtfully. "I always figured you would land on your feet somehow. You were too stubborn to do anything else." Brennan looked around the store again. "Looks like you found something better than cowboying anyway." After Brennan left, Deanna asked about him. Harrison told her more about his time working the ranches, about the men who had been his friends and the life he had thought would be his forever. "You miss it?" Deanna asked. "The cowboy life?" Harrison considered the question seriously. "Sometimes I miss the freedom of it, the simplicity. But I do not miss the loneliness, and I would not trade what I have now for anything. Not even for a working gun hand and the chance to go back, not even for that." Harrison pulled her close, Henry squished happily between them. "This is my life now, the 3 of us, the store, this town. This is where I belong." The years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and joys. Henry grew into a bright, energetic boy who loved helping in the store and listening to his father's stories about the old cowboy days. Harrison found that he could still teach his son about the skills he had learned: how to read the land, how to judge the weather, how to treat animals and people with respect. In 1884, Diana gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Dorothy. She had Deanna's green eyes and Harrison's stubborn chin, and from the moment she entered the world, she had both her parents wrapped around her tiny finger. Caring for 2 children while running a business was challenging, but Harrison and Deanna managed it with the same teamwork that had seen them through everything else. They hired additional help for the store, a young man named Peter who reminded Harrison a bit of himself at that age, eager to prove himself and willing to work hard. Harrison found himself in the unexpected role of mentor. He taught Peter the business, shared lessons learned from his own experiences, and tried to provide the kind of patient guidance Diana had once given him. It was satisfying work, helping shape someone else's future. The town of Concord continued to grow. New businesses opened, more families settled in the area, and the general store remained a central hub of the community. Harrison and Diana were respected figures in town, known for their fairness and generosity. They extended credit to struggling families, donated supplies to the church and school, and hosted community gatherings. One evening in the summer of 1886, As they sat on the porch watching Henry and Dorothy play in the dusty street, Diana leaned her head on Harrison's shoulder. "Do you remember the day you walked into my store? I remember thinking you were too good to be true, too kind, too patient, too willing to take a chance on a broken-down drifter. And now I know you are all of those things, but I also know I was not as broken as I thought. I just needed someone to help me see it." Diana lifted her head to look at him. "You did the hard work, Harrison. I just believed in you. You did more than believe. You were patient when I was angry, gentle when I was hurt, and persistent when I tried to push you away. You showed me that my worth was not tied to what I could do with my hands, but who I chose to be." "And who did you choose to be?" Harrison looked out at his children, at the store that bore his name alongside Diana's, at the town that had become his home. "A better man than I was. A good husband and father, someone who could build something lasting. You have done all of that and more." As the sun set over the Nevada desert, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and gold, Harrison reflected on the long journey that had brought him to this moment. The bullet that had shattered his hand had felt like the end of everything. Instead, it had been the beginning of something better than he could have imagined. He had been wrong about so many things. Wrong about his worth, wrong about his future, wrong about what it meant to be whole. Diana had been patient enough to let him discover the truth in his own time, wise enough to know that some lessons could not be rushed. The years continued to unfold with a gentle rhythm. Henry and Dorothy grew, each developing their own distinct personalities. Henry was thoughtful and serious, with a head for numbers that promised he would be good at business. Dorothy was adventurous and bold, always pushing boundaries and asking difficult questions. Harrison taught them both everything he could, not just practical skills, but values, hard work, honesty, compassion, the importance of treating everyone with dignity, regardless of their station in life. He told them stories about his cowboy days, but he also made sure they understood that the path he had ended up on was more fulfilling than anything he had left behind. In 1888, on their 9th wedding anniversary, Diana surprised Harrison with a gift. It was a beautifully crafted leather glove, designed specifically to support his damaged hand and make certain tasks easier. She had worked with a craftsman in Virginia City for months to get it exactly right. Harrison held the glove carefully, emotion tightening his throat. "Diana, this is. I know you have learned to work around the injury, but I thought this might help on the difficult days." She helped him put it on, adjusting the fit. "Does it feel all right?" Harrison flexed his hand, surprised by how much the support helped. "It feels wonderful, thank you. You have given me so much, Harrison. Let me give something back. You have given me everything that matters." He pulled her close, kissing her softly. "You gave me a reason to keep going when I wanted to give up. You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. What is a glove compared to that? Still, I am glad you like it." The glove did help, though Harrison rarely wore it in the store. He had learned to manage well enough without it, and he did not want customers thinking he needed special accommodations. But on days when his hand ached or when he was tackling a particularly difficult task, he wore it gratefully. As the 1880s drew to a close, Concord had grown from a small desert town into a thriving community. The silver mining in the area had created prosperity, and the town boasted several saloons, a proper hotel, 2 churches, and even a small theater. The general store had grown along with the town, now employing 4 people besides Harrison and Diana. Harrison found himself in a position he never could have imagined back when he first arrived, respected, successful, and happy. Men sought his advice on business matters. Women brought their children to the store and told them to behave like the Ellis children. He and Diana were pillars of the community, known for their integrity and kindness. But success had not changed them fundamentally. They still worked hard, still treated everyone fairly, still believed in the values that had brought them together. They taught their children the same lessons, making sure Henry and Dorothy understood that fortune could change quickly, and that character mattered more than wealth. One afternoon in the spring of 1890, a young man rode into Concord looking for work. He was thin and trail-worn, with an air of defeat that Harrison recognized immediately. The young man's left arm hung stiffly at his side, clearly injured. Harrison watched from the store window as the young man made his way down the street, stopping at various businesses and being turned away from each one. Finally, the young man approached the general store. "Can I help you?" Harrison asked as the man entered. "I am looking for work." "Any kind of work. I am a hard worker, despite the arm." The young man gestured to his injured limb. "Got caught in a stampede 6 months ago. It does not work right anymore, but I can still do most things." Harrison saw himself in this young man's eyes, the desperation, the fear of being useless, the desperate hope that someone might give him a chance. He glanced at Diana, who had been restocking shelves nearby. She met his eyes and gave a small nod. "What is your name?" Harrison asked. "Samuel." "Samuel Brooks." "Well, Samuel Brooks, I am Harrison Ellis, and this is my wife Diana. We might have some work for you if you are interested." The relief that flooded Samuel's face was almost painful to see. "Really? You would hire me even with the arm?" "I know something about working with an injury," Harrison said, holding up his scarred right hand. "The question is not whether you can do every task perfectly. The question is whether you are willing to work hard and learn new ways to do things." "I am willing. I am very willing." They hired Samuel that day, starting him on simple tasks and gradually increasing his responsibilities as he proved himself. Harrison took the young man under his wing, teaching him not just the work, but also the more important lesson he had learned from Diana, that an injury did not define a person's worth. Watching Samuel's confidence grow over the following months, Harrison felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He was paying forward the grace Diana had shown him, giving another broken young man the chance to discover he was not as broken as he thought. Diana watched this mentorship with pride. One evening she told Harrison, "You are doing for him what I did for you. I am trying. Though I could never be as patient as you were with me. You are plenty patient. You just see yourself the way you were, not the way you are." She took his hand, the scarred one, and held it gently. "You are a good man, Harrison Ellis. I hope you finally believe that. I do. Most days, anyway." "You made me believe it." The turn of the century approached, bringing with it a sense of possibility and change. Concord continued to evolve, and the general store evolved with it. They added a mail-order catalog, expanded their inventory to include more modern conveniences, and even installed one of the new cash registers that were becoming popular. Henry, now 20 years old, had taken on increasing responsibilities in the business. He had his father's work ethic and his mother's head for numbers. Dorothy, at 16, was still in school but helped in the store after classes. She had inherited her mother's way with people, able to charm even the most difficult customers. Samuel had become not just an employee but a friend. He had married a local girl and was talking about starting his own business eventually. Harrison had helped him save money and make connections, wanting to ensure the young man's success. One summer evening in 1900, as Harrison and Diana celebrated their 19th wedding anniversary, they sat on the porch and reflected on the journey they had taken together. "You remember what you told me the day you proposed?" Diana asked. "I remember being terrified you would say no. You said I made you believe you could be more than your worst moment. You did, You do. Deanna squeezed his hand. You made me believe in love that sees beyond the surface. You showed me what real partnership looks like. We showed each other, I think. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Harrison thought about the young man he had been when he first arrived in Concord, bitter, broken, convinced his life was over. He thought about all the moments since then that had brought him to this place of contentment. Diana's patient acceptance, their wedding day, holding his children for the first time, building a business and a life together. I love you, he said quietly. I do not say it often enough, but I do. I love you more than I knew it was possible to love someone. I know, Deanna replied. And I love you. I have loved you since the day you first walked into my store, even though it took you a while to let me show it. In the following years, Harrison and Deanna watched their children grow into capable adults. Henry took over more of the daily operations of the store, proving himself every bit as skilled as his parents. Dorothy, after finishing school, surprised everyone by deciding to pursue teaching. She wanted to work with children who struggled, who felt different or broken. I learned from watching Father, she told her parents. I saw how he never let his injury define him, how he found new ways to contribute. I want to help other people discover that same resilience. Harrison felt his throat tighten with pride. His daughter had learned the most important lesson he had to teach, that obstacles were challenges to be overcome, not reasons to give up. By 1905, Harrison was 53 years old. His right hand ached more than it used to, especially in cold weather, but he had long since stopped seeing it as a disability. It was simply a part of who he was, no more significant than his height or the color of his eyes. He had built a good life not despite his injury, but while living with it. The general store had become a Concord institution. Ellis and Kent General Goods was known throughout the region for fair prices and honest dealings. They had weathered economic downturns, changing trends and increased competition, emerging stronger each time. Samuel Brooks, true to his plans, had opened his own small business, a livery stable that was doing well. He credited Harrison and Deanna with giving him not just a job, but the confidence to dream bigger. Harrison was proud to have played that role, proud to have helped someone else find their path. One autumn afternoon, as Harrison and Deanna were working in the store, an elderly man walked in. It took Harrison a moment to recognize Tom Brennan, now stooped with age but still sharp-eyed. "Tom," Harrison greeted him warmly. "I did not know you were still around these parts." "I am retired now, living with my daughter in California, just passing through and wanted to see how you were doing." Brennan looked around the store with evident approval. "You have done well for yourself, Ellis." "We have been fortunate," Harrison replied, including Deanna with a gesture. They talked for a while, catching up on the years since they had last seen each other. Brennan told stories about the old days, about men they had both known who had passed on or retired. Finally, he said something that stuck with Harrison. "You know, when you left the ranch after getting shot, I figured that was the end for you. Thought you would drift until you found trouble or trouble found you. I am glad I was wrong." "I thought the same thing," Harrison admitted. "I felt like my life was over, but you found something better. You found a place where being a cowboy did not matter." "I found a place where I could be more than a cowboy, and I found someone who helped me see that was possible." Harrison looked at Deanna, who was helping a customer on the other side of the store. "Best thing that ever happened to me was walking into this store looking for work." Brennan nodded slowly. "You were always stubborn, Ellis. Guess you were stubborn enough to build a new life when the old one ended." After Brennan left, Harrison thought about his words, stubborn. Yes, he supposed he had been. Stubborn enough to keep trying when everything told him to give up. stubborn enough to believe Diana when she said he was not broken, stubborn enough to build something lasting. As the years continued to pass, Harrison and Diana settled into the gentle rhythm of middle age and eventual elder years. They watched Henry marry and start his own family, giving them grandchildren to dote on. They watched Dorothy become a beloved teacher, making a difference in young lives every day. They saw the store they had built together continue to thrive under Henry's management. On their 30th wedding anniversary in 1909, Harrison and Diana took a rare day off from the store. They rode out into the desert, just the two of them, to watch the sunset like they had done so many times over the years. 30 years, Diana mused. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like a lifetime. It has been a good lifetime, Harrison said. Better than I ever dreamed possible. Any regrets? Harrison thought about the question seriously. He thought about his old life, about the cowboy he had been before the shooting. He thought about all the things his injured hand meant he could not do. No, he said finally. Not a single one. Everything that happened, everything I lost, it led me here. To you, to our children, to this life. I would not change any of it. Diana leaned against him, and they watched the sun sink below the horizon in a blaze of color. Harrison felt a profound sense of peace. He had been so convinced that his worth was tied to what he could do, to his skills and abilities. Diana had taught him differently. She had shown him that worth came from character, from how you treated people, from the love you gave and received. He had thought he was too broken for love, too damaged to deserve happiness. She had been patient, had waited for him to see the truth that he was worthy exactly as he was. By 1912, Harrison was 60 years old. His hair had gone completely gray, and his right hand ached most days, but he was content. He and Diana had stepped back from the daily operations of the store, letting Henry run things while they offered advice when asked. They spent their days taking care of their grandchildren, working in Diana's garden, and enjoying the simple pleasures of a life well lived. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the younger generation go about their business in the town below, Diana said, "I have been thinking about something." "What is that?" "Do you remember the day we met, when you walked in looking for work, of course? I remember thinking you were crazy for hiring me on the spot. I knew immediately that you were the right person, not because of your skills or experience, but because of something I saw in your eyes. Despite all your pain and anger, there was still hope buried deep down. You had not given up, not really. You were just waiting for a reason to keep going." Harrison turned to look at her, this woman who had seen him when he could not see himself. "You were that reason. We were each other's reason. I needed you just as much as you needed me. After Father died, I was drowning in loneliness and responsibility. You gave me partnership, support, and eventually love. You showed me that I did not have to carry everything alone. I still cannot believe you chose me. There were men with better prospects, men without baggage. I did not want men with better prospects. I wanted you stubborn, wounded, determined you. I wanted the man who refused to give up even when everything told him to." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to emerge. Harrison thought about all the years they had shared, all the challenges they had overcome, all the joy they had created together. He thought about the young cowboy who had ridden into Concord thinking his life was over, and he marveled at how wrong he had been. His life had not ended that day. It had begun. As the years advanced into the mid-1910s, Harrison and Diana became beloved elders in Concord. They were living symbols of perseverance and love, their story known to everyone in town. Young people facing their own struggles would often seek Harrison out, knowing he understood what it meant to overcome adversity. He never tired of sharing his story, of explaining how he had learned to live with his limitations and build a life anyway. But he always made sure to credit Deanna, to explain that he could not have done it without her patient support and unwavering belief. Love is not just about the easy times, he would tell people. It is about being there when the other person is struggling, about having faith in them when they have lost faith in themselves. Deanna did that for me, and I have tried to do the same for her. In the autumn of 1918, as Harrison approached his 66th birthday, he and Deanna took stock of their lives. They had 4 grandchildren now, with another on the way. The store was thriving under Henry's management. Dorothy had become the headmistress of the local school. Samuel Brooks ran a successful livery business and had recently been elected to the town council. "We did all right," Deanna said one evening as they reviewed their legacy. "Better than all right," Harrison corrected. "We built something that will last beyond us. Not just the store, but the values we taught our children, the example we set for the community. The love we shared," Deanna added softly. "That most of all." They were sitting in their favorite spot on the porch, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and crimson. Harrison's right hand ached as it always did these days, but he barely noticed. The pain was just another part of him, no more significant than the wrinkles on his face or the gray in his hair. Deanna reached over and took his scarred hand in both of hers, just as she had done so many times over the years. The gesture still moved him, still made him feel seen and cherished. "You remember what I told you the day you proposed?" Deanna asked. "You told me I was more than enough." "You were, you are, you always have been." She lifted his hand and kissed it gently. "Thank you for letting me love you, Harrison Ellis. Thank you for being brave enough to believe you deserved it. Thank you for being patient enough to wait for me to figure it out." As darkness fell over Concord, Harrison reflected on the incredible journey his life had taken. From that desperate young cowboy riding into town thinking he had nothing left to offer, to this moment of peace and contentment. He had been wrong about so many things, but Deanna had been right about the one thing that mattered most. He was not broken. He was not less than he had been. He was simply different, and different was enough. The years continued their steady march. Harrison and Deanna grew older together, their love deepening with each passing season. They celebrated 50 years of marriage in 1928, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. The town of Concord threw them a celebration, recognizing the couple who had been such an integral part of the community for half a century. Harrison stood before the gathered crowd, Deanna at his side, and tried to find words adequate to express his gratitude. His right hand shook as it always did, and his voice was rough with age, but his message was clear. 50 years ago, I thought my life was over. I was wrong. My life was just beginning. Deanna Kent saw something in a broken-down cowboy that he could not see in himself. She was patient when I was difficult, loving when I felt unlovable, and steadfast when I wanted to give up. Everything good in my life, this family, this business, this community exists because she refused to let me believe I was not worthy of love. He turned to Deanna, tears streaming down his weathered face. "You saved me, not by fixing me, but by loving me exactly as I was. You showed me that worth is not measured by what you can do, but by who you choose to be. I chose to be the man you believed I could be, and it made all the difference." The crowd applauded, but Harrison barely heard them. He was looking at Deanna, at the woman who had been his partner and his compass for 50 years. She was crying too, her green eyes still as bright as they had been the day they met. "I love you," he told her. "Today, tomorrow, and for whatever time we have left." "I love you too," she replied. "Always and forever." They danced that night, moving slowly to the music, Harrison's arms around his wife. His damaged hand held her as carefully as his good one, both equally cherished by the woman in his embrace. Around them, their family and friends celebrated, but Harrison was only aware of Deanna, her warmth, her presence, her love. This was what he had almost missed. This joy, this peace, this deep sense of belonging. He had been so convinced that his injury had destroyed his chance at happiness. Deanna had shown him the truth that happiness was not something you had or did not have, but something you built, piece by piece, day by day. As the 1920s gave way to the 1930s, Harrison and Deanna entered the twilight of their lives. They moved more slowly, tired more easily, but their love remained constant. They spent their days in quiet contentment, sitting together on the porch, playing with their great-grandchildren, and reminiscing about the life they had shared. The store was now run by their grandson, Henry's oldest son, but it still bore the name Ellis and Kent. It was still known for fair dealing and honest prices. The values Harrison and Deanna had built it on had been passed down through the generations, becoming part of the family legacy. On a warm spring evening in 1933, as they sat watching another sunset, Deanna took Harrison's hand, the scarred right one, as she always did. "Are you happy?" she asked, a question she had posed many times over their years together. "I am content," Harrison replied, his voice thin with age but steady with conviction. "I am grateful, I am loved. What more could a man ask for?" "Nothing," Deanna said softly. "There is nothing more." They sat in peaceful silence, two old people who had weathered life's storms together and emerged stronger for it. Harrison thought about the young man he had been, so certain that his worth had been destroyed along with his gun hand. He wished he could go back and tell that desperate cowboy what waited for him in a small Nevada town called Concord. He would tell him about the patient woman with green eyes who would see past his injury to the man beneath. He would tell him about the family they would build, the business they would create, the love they would share. He would tell him that being broken was not the end, but the beginning of something better than he could imagine. But mostly, he would tell him to have hope, to believe that worthy meant something different than he thought, to trust that love could find him even in his darkest moment. Harrison Ellis died peacefully in his sleep in the spring of 1935, at the age of 82. Deanna held his hand as he slipped away, the scarred right hand she had held countless times over their 57 years together. She mourned him deeply, but she also celebrated the life they had built, the love they had shared, and the legacy they would leave behind. She lived another 3 years, watching over their growing family and ensuring the values she and Harrison had cherished were passed on to the next generation. When she died in 1938, it was with Harrison's name on her lips and peace in her heart. They were buried side by side in the Concord cemetery, their headstones simple but meaningful. Harrison Ellis, 1853–1935. Beloved husband, father, grandfather, he was worthy of love. Deanna Kent Ellis, 1854–1938. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, she taught him to believe it. The story of the broken cowboy and the patient woman became part of Concord's history, told and retold over the years. It was a story about second chances, about the healing power of love, about the courage it takes to believe you deserve happiness. It was a story about two people who found each other at exactly the right moment and built something lasting from the ruins of a shattered dream. And in the general store that still bore their names, generations of the Ellis family continued their work, carrying on the values that Harrison and Deanna had taught them. Treat people fairly. Work hard. Never judge someone by their limitations. And above all, believe that everyone, even those who feel broken, is worthy of love. That was the legacy of Harrison and Deanna Ellis, and it endured long after they were gone. A reminder that our worth is not determined by our circumstances or abilities, but by our character and the love we share with others. A reminder that patient kindness can heal wounds no doctor can touch. A reminder that it is never too late to start again, to believe in ourselves, to accept love when it finds us. Harrison had thought he was too broken for love. Diana had shown him the truth that love does not require perfection, only the courage to be seen as we truly are. And in that seeing, in that patient acceptance, we discover that we were never as broken as we believed. We were always worthy. We just needed someone to help us see it.